One. Round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a good conversation. We have a lot to get through. The big question we're going to be answering, and I think we already have the answer, and frankly, whether the global south is now the engine of growth. It is already the engine of growth. We're still asking the question because there's certain metrics we need to hit. And there are certain challenges ahead. The question is, how do we transcend where we are now and hit the overall ambitions that we have in mind? I'd like the audience to get involved, if I may, and we have a wonderful way for you to get involved. And the question I have is the Global South now the engine of growth, and which do you believe has the greatest investment opportunities? You're going to conduct this poll for us. We're going to give the answers as they come through. A, Middle East. B, Sub-Saharan Africa. C, Southeast Asia. D, South America. Those are your options, ladies and gentlemen. We want you to get involved in the conversation. And as I said, we have a lot to get through. From a metrics perspective, we're seeing emerging markets, the Global South, really making a big mark. We have problems though. Debt, slowing growth in China, for example. We're seeing a multipolar world potentially emerging. The fear of the West losing its domination and what it means with the rise of the Global South. So, Honorable Paul, I'd like to start off with you. All eyes on China, by the way. We want you to grow faster because we need you.
We are growing faster.
Are you going? But it's not enough.
Yeah. Well, in the process of growing, one has to make substantial investments. And in the process, naturally, you need to raise funds from the private market. So the question is to find innovative solutions for those funding possibilities. And also in the process, doing the proper due diligence with regard to the commercial viability of those projects. Say, for example, we in Hong Kong, we try to help jurisdictions in the Global South to securitize some of their brownfield infrastructure projects so that the funds can be channeled back to invest into green projects. Altogether, we have done 2 deals in the past couple of months, releasing about $700 million to be channeled back to new projects. So,
in the Global South in particular?
That includes even jurisdictions in Latin America, Chile. Yeah.
Fantastic. Mohamed, great to have you with us.
Thank you.
I've been spying on you. You've been doing a lot of interesting things. You've invested in Albania, Latvia, Croatia, and then Indonesia. Yes. And I heard that you were in Madagascar, yes, not on holiday, but doing something else. Is there something you want to tell us about your next investment there?
Well, when I first went to Albania, of course, I was not sure, but everybody was telling me that there are criminals on the streets and all that. And I said, yeah, don't go to Albania. Let me finish my deal and then you come in. So, yeah, I'm lucky enough that I get good advice. I go to interesting places. Yeah, I think Madagascar is probably the next new thing in my life.
So you're not denying it, there's going to be an investment?
No, it's going to be very big also.
Breaking news at FI, ladies and gentlemen. Round of applause for Mr. Alabbar.
But I really would like to comment on something you said. You said dominance, the West dominance. And the truth is that we want everyone to grow. We want the West to grow, we want the East to grow, we want the North to grow. Because, we live in a very little place called Earth. But unfortunately, the West is suffering. And the suffering in the West is that the South, they are more disciplined people. They're younger people. The North are older people. Yeah. I think the North, or the West, you call it Northwest, I think democracy have gone too far. Where, the young, educated, hard worker, disciplined Global South is productive. And the North, and I operate in the North, they're quite busy with this complex democracy. And I think the amount of time spent in the North and the West on interesting things like, LGBT or women's right. What about the 90%? Like nobody talks about, in the West, nobody talks about the 90% or the 95%, but so much focus on LGBT and all the other.
So you're saying the
So I'm
West
saying,
is distracted with
no,
things that
I
don't...
think the bureaucracy is getting complicated. Democracy have gone too far, while debt have gone too far as well, right? But I think the where we are.
So what's the alternative if democracy has gone too far?
I don't
you
know,
think?
but I think maybe we should go back to the Roman times. Roman
Roman times?
They don't allow everybody to vote. Only eligible, smart, capable, educated people vote. Not everybody votes. But nowadays with social media, manipulation, fighting between political parties, I think the global South is learning that this type of democracy will destroy their countries. So I think they're becoming smarter. They're learning from what they see. But I think the global South, as I said, are younger, more educated, hard worker, disciplined. They understand technology, while the other party, we want them to succeed. I mean, imagine if we don't have successful America. It's dangerous for the world not to have a successful America. But then again, how's the politics going? I mean, I have a home in Beverly Hills, and my kids don't want to go there because they say it's dangerous. I mean, this is not nice. This
I know, and
cannot
it's
go
so
on like this.
multifaceted.
I don't know what the
what you
solution,
say.
but I'm just saying they're smarter people. They talk about the AI in America and all that stuff. Let them go fix it. Come on, we all live in a very small place, no?
I mean, you raise so many issues because you're looking at the political environment, the notion of democracy, whether that is going to help boost growth, the role of the
And
the
is
global
dominance,
South.
this business of somebody should dominate somebody, is this something that you guys...
But it has happened whether we like
should
it or
stop
not.
this dominance business.
Indeed, and I think that's why there's a big question, and it's a good one. There's a big, by the way, now we all saw the BRICS summit wrapping up in Russia, and everyone is afraid after that family photo with the BRICS plus countries, the actual BRICS partners, what it means that Russia isn't so isolated and so forth. We can mention a plethora of things. But the ultimate message that it's sending is the global South is here, it has got a voice, and there is an investment opportunity. There is an argument for investment, but I think a lot of people are looking at this and saying, is this trying to get rid of the Western side of things? And I see, Katie, you want to jump in on this. No, you're just nodding. Now you got yourself into this.
Yeah.
So you've got a fund. You're investing a lot in the global South. But tell me about these macro issues,
Sure.
how you guys are viewing it from your firm in Los Angeles.
Sure. So just by way of brief background, I have the privilege of leading TCW. We're a global asset manager, $200 billion, manage private credit, public credit, and equities. In the public credit space, we've managed emerging, I think this is why I'm on the panel. We've managed emerging markets pretty much as long as anybody in the space. And we've had the great privilege of managing assets on behalf of clients in this region and in this country for a long period of time. It's been a very great asset class for us over the long term from a beta and from an alpha perspective. So delighted to be here. This is my favorite country in the global South, other than the ones represented on this panel, because I want to compliment all my panelists.
Yeah.
And then you asked the question. I want to give you a sense of what I think, if any in this audience, given that we're capital allocators, you probably care how we're allocating capital in emerging markets debt. And I'll just end by saying something about how we allocate in the global South and maybe a country that we are excited about that's not on other people's radars. You made this comment at the outset, I want to emphasize this. The global South already is a massive contributor to global growth, so people probably understand this, but in 1990 it contributed 20% to global growth. Today the number's over 40%, so we've already seen a massive contribution. And in the next couple of years, it's going to grow 1 or 2% more than the global average. So I just want to give that balancing comment that there already is a lot of growth despite the challenges. And we are excited about this in the context of emerging markets. It's going to be supported by industrialization, by the leapfrogging of technology, by greater infrastructure, which Bio is a world expert at, so I'll let him unpack that, and better demographics. And so we're quite optimistic on the outlook for that. Other themes are that people need to diversify their energy sources. Many of these countries can be beneficiaries of that. It's the greenification of the economy.
Yeah.
Many of these countries can be the beneficiaries of that. And I'll end by saying, countries just that we allocate capital to that not everybody's thinking about. I'll put one out there, which is Zambia, which obviously is in Africa. They have a goal to triple their copper production by over the next 5 years. The constraining factor has been power. 85% of their power is hydro, and they've had a drought, but they're diversifying their power sources, and we think they're going to be successful at that. And then I'll last comment, Guyana, which many of you may be familiar with, is actually the fastest growing country in the world, one that we're tracking really closely in South America. It's going to grow 40% this year. Another thing not on people's radar. Unfortunately, they don't have a debt market yet. When you're growing that fast, you don't need a lot of debt, but we are building relationships and going there and expect in the future to add capital. So we think emerging markets is a great strategic asset allocation. This region has actually been the most committed to emerging markets. While retail money has come in and out, there's a lot of sophisticated capital here that's been committed for the long haul that I think has served clients well, and I compliment everybody on that. The Global South will be a really important part of it. And within emerging markets, there's 70 countries. There's a lot of plurality to pick from. And I mentioned 2 that aren't on people's radar. So the opportunity set is deep.
So we have our avatar on standby wanting to ask our panelists a question. Let's listen in.
The Global South's share of world GDP surged from 19% in 1990 to 42% in 2022. Its rise challenges traditional economic power structures, especially those dominated by the global North and West.
Feels like a statement.
Yeah.
By the way, apparently these AI bots kind of hallucinate as well. Do you know that? This is kind of the things that... So Adebayo, I want you to jump in here. And by the way, just adding to what our avatar said, the Global South now accounts for 88% of the global population. That is where the growth is. That is where the investments are. You're focused on infrastructure. Tell me what the needs are right now and how you're able to plug those holes.
Well, look, it's very simple. We invest, you said we invested in infrastructure. And I've never been more excited than I am today about the opportunities in the Global South. Why do I say that? Because, look, when you invest, it's much easier to invest where there are tailwinds than where there are headwinds. When the Global South is going 2 or 3 times as fast as the North, you have the economic growth that's providing opportunities for you. But I think what has changed in the last 5, 10 years is the willingness to attract private capital into infrastructure. So we are big investors in Latin America, we're big investors in Mexico, we're big investors in Southeast Asia, we're investing in renewables, we own airports, we own power plants. So if you think about all of the huge trends that are going to drive economic activity over the next 5 years, decarbonization, well, the Global South actually has an excess share of the essential minerals for decarbonization. That creates opportunities. Energy security, again, whether it's the kingdom or Qatar, lots of natural resources that are critical to energy security. Digitization, we had Massa talk about AGI and ASI. The cheapest sources of energy are in the Global South. Okay, so that creates an advantage for countries who want to take advantage of it, to build data centers, to power this artificial intelligence and the language models. So I think tremendous opportunities.
So let me
Why
ask
wouldn't
you
you
this.
be excited?
Let me ask you this. You've spoken about where you're investing, which sectors. Where are you not investing? And I want you to talk about jurisdictions. Which countries in the Global South will you not touch?
Well, there's some that are obvious. You're not going to invest in North Korea, right? We're not investors in, clearly we've never invested in Russia. We're not investors in Russia. We're not investors in Africa, but not because we don't think there are countries that are in Africa that are attractive. The reason we're not is when we invest, we're looking to deploy $1 billion, $2 billion of equity in each investment we make. And so there are not that many large opportunities in Africa. If there were, we would look for opportunities.
By the way,
in Africa.
infrastructure deficits every single year in Africa is over $100 billion.
Yep.
I'm sure you'll find some projects there.
Well,
I'm rooting for Africa.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I have my own agenda. Sanjeev, I want you to jump in here. Let's talk about agriculture. We'll come to you. I want to talk about agriculture, and we know in the future we need arable land, we need food security, we need water, we need to stay warm and cool, obviously, in certain markets. There are certain things that are absolutely fundamental. How important is investment in agriculture and how the Global South can play that role?
I think it's a very important point that you've touched upon. because investment in agriculture in Africa, for example, where it's more than 50% of the arable land of the world, it's not only important for transformation of Africa because 60% of the workforce is engaged in agriculture, but also for global food security because food security is becoming a real challenge globally because of climate change. So it's absolutely essential and pivotal to do that. And I think that the good news is that, there are challenges doing it because, first of all, the basics as connectivity, physical infrastructure is minimal, is not there. So you cannot really access and reach the produce to the right places unless physical infrastructure is there. The second is it's also possible, of course, they have the usual challenges of fragmented land holdings. They have this challenge of the wrong work practices and soil conditions being very poor, water being inadequate, although there is water available under the ground. So multitude of challenges. So how do you deal with that? I think fortunately, there's a technology leapfrogging that's possible if you take a leaf out of what's happening in India with the public digital infrastructure, the agri-stack and the application layers that businesses are putting in place. I think that's a way to reach the farmers easily. And the other, I think, lesson that we can take out of India is that India also has fragmented land holdings. So how do you kind of organize the farmers in terms of farmer-producer organizations? You get some aggregation to be able to access them. But all these, of course, require investments in physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, capacity building. So, and in some of the most challenged countries, these issues the resources are not there. And there are also debt issues. So I think, it's during the last G20, India's presidency, I think two important things happened there. One is that European Union was incorporated within G20. I think getting a seat at the table hopefully will enable engagement to find creative solutions to some of these issues.
You mean African Union?
Sorry?
The African
Union.
African Union.
African Union. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Apologize for that.
Yeah, but it's really important because having the AU, by the way, look how long it took for the AU to have a seat at the table.
Yeah. And the other important development was that there was this whole agenda about reforming multilateral development institutions.
Yeah.
Both in terms of balance sheets and also how they would lend from things like blended financing and particularly in some of the economies that are under stress right now, how do you kind of create instruments to de-risk investments? Because ultimately, private capital will go where risks and rewards are commensurate. Otherwise, it's not going to go.
Yeah.
And private capital does need to go.
All right, I'm cognizant of time, so let's keep it short and sweet so we can get through another round of questions. Ricardo, I know that you are, and actually you corrected me backstage because I said you really like crypto, and you said, no, actually, it's Bitcoin. Only Bitcoin.
Yeah.
The reason that is significant is because we keep talking about the dollar being the dominant currency. Me coming from Africa, I know the difficulty in cross-border payments, always having to go through the US dollar. I just wonder about the current payment system we're seeing globally and whether that is going to change, whether the dominance of the dollar might change going forward. Keeping in mind we are in Saudi and the petrodollar is, the historical part of it.
We're obviously getting to the end of the dollar dominance era because they are debasing the currency at such a rate that it's not going to last too long. And that's why people like me who look at Bitcoin as a solid unit of value, of a store of value, is so important for us. Also, it's a system that is not subject to retaliatory measures that will leave you with nothing if you step on the wrong toes, So that's just one example of innovation that drives growth. I'm an entrepreneur.
And a solution for the global south, would you say?
Well, one of the main problems of the global south, I would say, is this terrible currency system that we have, which mostly is pegged to the dollar, but that occasionally gets even more abused than the dollar. And we have cases like Venezuela, Argentina, Cuba, and we can go on Zimbabwe, and we can go on and on and on about how currency has been debased. And that is a huge drag on growth because it decapitalizes everybody. It makes everybody poor. You know, I know firsthand when I started working in my group 40 years ago, when I founded it, our exchange rate in Mexico was 3-1, and that was 20-1, 20-1. And today, 42 years later, it's still 20-1, but 20,000 because they took out 3 numbers. Right? So that's what I lived through, from 20 to 20,000.
Wow.
And I survived, so I'm pretty good at that.
You did. I have to tell you about me holding a $1 trillion Zimbabwean note, by the way, so I know all about inflation. I want to go to our avatar. We have a question. Yes, ma'am.
Despite its dominance, the US dollar's share of global currency reserves has declined from 70% in 2000 to 58% in 2022, suggesting a gradual erosion of its hegemony in international finance. Do the panelists think this trend will continue?
Mohamed.
I think there'll be more collaboration.
Yeah.
I think, people should not take it against the people who want to be part of BRICS. I think it's just another group. I think they will collaborate with other people. The dollar has a chance. I think other currencies should have a chance. Bitcoin should have a chance. But then let's take us back to the dominance.
But should it be the reserve currency of the world, and how does that affect the global south?
I don't know if that's relevant anymore. I don't know if the reserve currency of if you are printing this reserve currency of the world, is this the thing we want really?
Paul?
It seems to me that, countries around the world try to manage their foreign exchanges when it comes to trading and trade settlement. And in that sense, a lot of jurisdictions want to trade in their own currency. So the challenge is how to create a system to take care of that. Say, for example, Hong Kong, along with Saudi Arabia and a few other jurisdictions, we have a Enbridge projects facilitating trade settlements. Trading transactions denominated in their own local currency. And through digitalization, this can be settled by using their own currency. And this is gaining increasing confidence and increasing interest. And this is a project, I think, worth pushing forward for the good of everybody. If I may, I want to go back a little to the earlier question. I think the question you earlier asked, which jurisdiction one may exclude from investing, may not be the best question to ask, because it is always a question of risk and return. So it is very much depending also on the focus of investments of the fund or the appetite or focus of the specific investor. So the more relevant question perhaps should be which particular theme of investment in the coming decade and which are the geographic areas or jurisdictions one would be more interested to cast their investments. And I would argue that digitalization and green must be the theme for the coming years, particularly climate-related investments. There are tremendous gaps, and this would be very rewarding investments for global investors. The question is how to make sure those investments are going to the right projects and including green transition rather than facilitating greenwashing. So I think international understanding and cooperation on the proper green standards, proper reporting standards are important. And we in Hong Kong are contributing on that. And aside from that must be digitalization. FinTech, for example, in financial services. The Enbridge project I mentioned is just one example. There are a lot that can be done to make financial services more accessible, more inclusive, so that everyone can enjoy the benefit of the advance in financial services. I think that is the next question that we have to address, particularly to the relatively developing countries.
And it's such an important point that you make, Paul, because at the end of the day, a lot of the global south and actually emerging markets have not industrialized fully yet, and that's going to be a burden on what we talk about in terms of climate change agenda. How can we leapfrog certain technologies? So to end off, we've got a few minutes left. I'm going to go through everyone, and then Mohamed, I'm ending with you because I have an important question. I'm not letting go what you said earlier about the Roman times. Ricardo.
I'm sure the people in Silicon Valley have better solutions on how this democracy should work.
Yeah.
And we don't end up with failing Europe. And soon, I hope, not failing USA. I mean, so like, can you provide security for my expensive neighborhood where I pay a lot of taxes? Like, what can we do?
Wait, I know. It's okay, you've got a few minutes to think about that. Ricardo, I want to start with you. The most exciting technologies and investments that you're looking at right now, that Mexico is focused on right now, and then we're going to go through to all the other delegates.
Well, I could go on and on about technology, but I want to go back to jurisdiction because I think it is critically important to have the right jurisdiction. I mean, as a businessman, you work hard to make your capital, and then you want to look at where you're going to invest it, and you don't want to be expropriated or deposed of your capital somehow. So jurisdiction is critically important.
So you need stability and you need democracy?
Yes. So my country, for example, Mexico, we were a one-party state for 85 years. In the year 2000, we elected the first opposition president and became democratic.
Yeah.
So we had a huge, disappointment because nothing happened and everything continued the same. And now we just had an election and we're back to the one-party state. There you have it.
It's interesting, yes.
And now it's even worse because now it's a democratic tyranny where the majority dictates on top of the minority.
You know what I've learned is actually for the Global South to really propel and reach its ambitions and its targets is that policy continuity and stability is needed. It doesn't matter under which, what you name the politics, frankly. And I think that's important. Very quickly, Sanjeev, let me know what you're thinking.
Well, that's absolutely right. And if you look at the examples of where investments and progress has been good, it's been on account of good policies and stability in policies for sure. But I just also want to make a comment on this whole business about where to invest on technology. I think from a global south perspective, so particularly countries that have not progressed enough, I think investment on public digital infrastructure is what is fundamental. If we look at the UPI system in India, and that's also being used for cross-border movements now, the transactions are more than the rest of the world together. That's how deep it has gone. And it's very economical. I think those are the kind of investments are very, very pivotal for Global South.
Adebayo, 30 seconds.
Look, what else do you expect me to say about infrastructure? Look at the major trends. Digitization, energy security, decarbonization, supply chain rearrangement. All are going to require huge amounts of capital investment. All are going to require huge amounts of investment.
But you need policy continuity.
Policy continuity is a given, okay? It's a given. Those are table stakes for investments. But those are the areas where I think are the most exciting.
Katie.
Well, I'm still kind of digesting the comment that the U.S. could no longer be the reserve currency. I think that might be one of the most important things set up here, or things to think about for people in this room, because it's an exorbitant privilege to be the world's reserve currency. And if someone's going to challenge it, and we thought for a while it would be some of the BRIC economies, you said at the outset, that hasn't happened yet. Maybe it is Bitcoin. But I have to tell you, as someone who manages a lot of treasuries, that's, it's making me reflect on that being quite dislocating. The U.S. actually is running itself more like an emerging market. We lecture the world about a lot of things.
Republic like we used to be.
100 with 6% current account deficit as a percentage of GDP, which we grew during the period of economic expansion. Yeah. We are writing checks that we can't cash. All these things that we lectured emerging economies about, sent them to the IMF for, we're doing ourselves now. We call that an economic miracle. In France, they're calling that, they're in a fiscal crisis. So I think that's a very interesting comment. I don't know how it will play out in the bond market, but maybe that's why Treasury yields are rising now despite the Fed cutting rates, because that is a possibility that people think could be threatened and the deficit's not sustainable.
You see that timer? Before I could go over, but now we've got an avatar that's going to stop me. So I'm going to steal 1 minute, Sophie. I hope you don't mind. Okay, Paul.
Yeah,
quickly.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm kind of principle-based when it comes to decision-making. So in the choice of jurisdiction, I gather that what we are really looking at is an area with safe, stable environment, and government policy being consistent, transparent, and predictable. And applying this principle, I think in Global South, there are still a lot of jurisdictions we can deploy our capital. Even for those with less satisfactory environment, I think it is up to us to structure the deal so as to address and mitigate the concern, so that the investment is not just for financial return, it also be good for social impact for those jurisdictions that we are investing in, creating more value than just financial returns.
Mohamed, I'm giving you the last word.
Yeah, well, you know, I keep telling you Silicon Valley, I really believe that to solve democracy, I think AI should select the right person to rule in every country. And with my respect, to the US Constitution, you know, this US Constitution is such an old-fashioned, written, 300, 400 years ago. Like, I update my phone every 3 weeks. This is Constitution.
But look at how it works. I mean, we've seen how much growth because of
why
democracy.
Is this thing so old? But I would say one thing. I think AI knows how often you call your mom, knows if you pay your debt or not, you know what you do on Facebook, knows what you do on YouTube, knows what books you read, knows how good you are to your wife and your children, knows if you pay your loan on time, and say, this girl is the greatest president, forget about everything. The rest is all window dressing. It's all a show, right? All these marketing, it's a show.
Okay, Sophie's going to come out and shout at us for going over time. But Mohamed, what a way to end this panel. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for injecting energy into this. Ladies and gentlemen, my fantastic Global South panel, thank you so much. I'd like to welcome the one and only Richard Grace back on stage.